Good evening. The February 20th, 2024 legislative session of the Anne Arundel County Council is called to order. Please ensure all phones and electronic devices are set to silent. Ms. Hummer will lead us in the invocation.
It is my pleasure this evening to welcome Reverend Samuel Colbert of Mount Zion United Methodist Church in Laurel to give the invocation this evening.
Greetings, let us pray. As we take this opportunity to offer our prayers, I ask that each of you join me in your form of prayer to the one you're most familiar with praying to. Heavenly Father, we come this evening giving you thanks for all things, asking for your guidance, your wisdom, and support of neighbor as we begin another council meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Fill us, O God, with your grace as we make decisions that will affect us and those around us. Continue to remind us that all that we do here this evening, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the better glory of you, and for the service of humanity in the communities we serve. O God, guard our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right through and always. We seek blessings on the task before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions in impartiality. May our personal faith give us strength to act honestly and well in all of the matters before us tonight. We ask these things in the one that we pray to. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Colbert. We appreciate you.
Madam Secretary, please read the ethics statement.
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The chair of the Ethics Commission has asked that those who wish to testify in any form review the general information on lobbying sheet located on the Ethics website under Forms and Publications. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, please contact the Ethics Commission. 410-222-4413.
Thank you. We will now open our invitation to the audience. This is an opportunity to speak briefly on any subject not included in the printed agenda. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. We received about five submissions. One of those submissions, however, seemed to be more towards Bill 124, and so it will be added to that portion of the meeting record. Everything is included in a summary that's posted online, and everyone here did receive an email as well.
We will now call on individuals who signed up ahead of the meeting. When your name is called, please come up to the table, state your name and address before making your remarks. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. Signed up in advance, I have Devin Maxwell and Kurt Svensson. I don't see Devin Maxwell, so Mr. Svensson, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Kurt Svensson, Arnold, Maryland. I worked in Anne Arundel County government for over 25 years. I served in the budget office under 6 different county executives from John Gary through Stuart Pittman. For 10 of those years, I was the assistant budget officer. I've witnessed many different variations of power relationships between and among the 2 branches of local government. The county council consists of both the majority and minority parties in our entrenched 2-party system. As such, the legislative branch is uniquely positioned to be the citizens' champion, those in the minority as well as those in the majority. I don't know the full backstory to the drama that unfolded at the end of the February 5th County Council meeting, but I do know this. Over the past 5 years or so, I've witnessed time and again the majority party act with an unprecedented arrogance of power. Examples of this are included in my written testimony. At that February 5th meeting, I saw a bipartisan coalition of 4 members drawing a line in the sand by formalizing the long-standing idea that each and every member should have an equal say in how things are run. This idea is essential to our representative government. Protection from the tyranny of the majority and ensuring a true system of checks and balances is essential. We, the citizens of Anne Arundel County, need a legislative branch that governs itself in a fair and open manner, such that each representative in that branch has a codified role in administrative decisions. Indeed, some of those administrative decisions determine what matters are exposed to the light of day, as opposed to being tucked away in the shadows of a back room. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is anyone else here who wishes to speak, please come up to the table, state your name and address and topic before making your remarks. Seeing no movement, the invitation to audience is now closed. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda? Madam Secretary, please read resolution number 7-24.
Resolution number 724, resolution appointing legislative counsel to the county council. Whereas section 302B of the Anne Arundel County Charter and rule 2-104 of the rules of procedure of the county council authorize the appointment of legislative counsel to the county council. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the county council of Anne Arundel County, Maryland, that it hereby appoints Meredith L. Beach as legislative counsel to the county council. And be it further resolved that Ms. Beach will begin her service as legislative counsel to the county council on February 21st, 2024.
Thank you. Is there any discussion regarding resolution 7-24? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 7-24.
Ms. Fiedler. Aye. Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 724 has been passed.
Thank you. May I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution, or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole? Is there a second?
Rodvian, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Madam Secretary, please read the minutes of February 5th, 2024.
Minutes of February 5th, 2024. The County Council meeting was called to order by Chair Pickard at 7 p.m. It was opened with the invocation given by Mr. Volkey and was followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The meeting was held in the County Council chambers in Annapolis, Maryland.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 5th, 2024?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second?
Ledbetter, second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The minutes of February 5th, 2024 stand approved as read. Madam Secretary, please read the titles of the bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill number 1324, an ordinance concerning payment in lieu of taxes, College Parkway Place, Annapolis, Maryland. Bill number 1424, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, zoning, small business districts.
Madam Secretary, please read the titles of the resolutions to be introduced this evening.
Resolution number 624, resolution confirming appointment of members of the Anne Arundel County Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board. Resolution number 824, resolution to establish an ad hoc committee to study and make recommendations on personnel policies for the legislative branch of Anne Arundel County government.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 93-23.
Bill number 9323, an ordinance concerning pensions, participation, transferred service, employees retirement plan, fire service retirement plan, police service retirement plan.
Thank you. This is administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table are Kelly Lovett from the Office of Personnel, Chris Trumbauer from the Budget Office, and Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. This bill has been discussed a number of times at previous council meetings and at a work session. As amended, this bill adds employees of the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County as participants in the Employees Retirement Plan, adds employees in certain job classifications as participants in the Fire Service Retirement Plan, and allows participants in the Fire Service and Police Service Retirement Plan who terminate employment for less than 12 months to return to participate in the plan under certain conditions, and provides the calculation and repayment of contributions to reenter the plan. There is one technical amendment, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Is there any discussion at this time? Mr. Volke.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer, are you sticking around for Bill 424?
Are you requesting that I do?
I am.
Then it looks like I am,
Thank
Councilmember.
you. Thank you.
When are we going to hear that on the agenda?
Let's get through 9323. Is there any discussion? We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 93-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
I don't have anybody signed up to speak on Bill number 93-23. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on Bill number 93-23? Seeing no movement, the public hearing on Bill number 93-23 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 93-23.
Bill number 9323, an ordinance concerning pensions, participation, transferred service, employees retirement plan, fire service retirement plan, police service retirement plan.
We do have an amendment. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 5.
Amendment number 5, this technical amendment corrects and adjusts the subdivision of certain subsections.
Mr. Hunt, did you want to comment on the amendment?
It's just does what it says it does. It adjusts some numbering. So.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second?
Hummer, second.
Is there any discussion on this technical amendment? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 5.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 5 has been adopted.
With that, Bill number 93-23 is up for a vote this evening. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 93-23.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 93-23 has been passed.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 1-24.
Bill number 124, an ordinance concerning public safety, animal care and control, potentially dangerous, and vicious animals.
Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table are Captain Jeff Adams from the Police Department and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. So we did discuss this bill previously at our last council meeting. It amends the criteria for designating an animal as potentially dangerous, or vicious, establishes a process for reconsideration of a potentially dangerous or dangerous order, authorizes the police department's animal care and control agency to waive redemption, adoption, spay, and neuter fees, and amends specified animal license fees in the second and subsequent years they are issued, and requires owners to pay specified costs associated with the care of their seized and surrendered animals in cruelty cases. I know there are some amendments to discuss, so happy to take any questions at this time, or we can move on to the hearing.
Do we have any discussion at this time? We'll go ahead with the public hearing. We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 1-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There were 2 submissions. Again, one came from that invitation to audience submission. Those have been added to the record and are included in that summary that is posted online as well.
We do have several speakers signed up to speak in advance. May we have Ms. Brienza, J.C. Kyle, Linda Mazer, and Kip Imperato. I'm saying that totally wrong. Imperato. Ms. Brienza, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Jennifer Brienza. I sit on the Animal Matters Commission, but tonight I'm here as a private citizen. I'm here, first of all, to support amendment number 6. I believe elevating the standard alone is sufficient to protect animals from any unwarranted death sentence. But the evidentiary requirement essentially eliminates the use of circumstantial evidence. And for me, that the practical effect is eliminating some common sense as well. For example, a recent case before the commission showed an unleashed dog charging up a neighbor's lawn and go attacking the homeowner's dog on its own porch. But once the, even though the video was captured on a Ring video camera, once the dog got onto the porch, it was below the camera's view. So now we can't see it anymore. We can hear it, we know what's going on, but under the way this bill is currently written, it wouldn't meet the standard, it wouldn't be sufficient. I'm also concerned that keeping the bill the way it is would marginalize some nonverbal victims and potentially disabled citizens. One example would be if you're visiting at a friend's house and your toddler goes into the other room with their dog, and that dog now attacks the toddler. The only witness to that is a nonverbal toddler, and there could be overwhelming circumstantial evidence to support a vicious designation. But under this bill, we wouldn't be able to use it because it doesn't meet the standard that's been set. I'd also like to let the council know that I'm in support of amendment number 7. However, I think the 1 versus 5 year debate could be alleviated altogether if changed to a material change in circumstance, where any request for reconsideration would be subject to a 2-pronged test. Number 1 being, since the entry of the order, have circumstances changed such as the conditions ordered are no longer appropriate? And 2, if so, can the conditions reasonably be modified while still maintaining public safety? This way, rather than getting another bite at the apple with the same set of facts every so often just because, parties have a threshold to meet first. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kyle.
Thank you. Good evening, County Council members. My name is Jackie Kyle. I'm the chair of the Animal Welfare Council. We are a group of Anne Arundel County residents, including 2 local practicing veterinarians who are appointed by the county executive to give input on animal welfare issues. We fully support Amendments 6 and 7 to Bill number 1-24. First, Animal Welfare Council members earnestly try to balance our recommendations on legislation concerning the very serious consequence of euthanasia for a dog that is determined to be vicious with the concern for public safety. Requiring eyewitness/video evidence to secure a vicious determination is simply going too far. We have given the strongest recommendation possible with a unanimous 9-0 recommendation to strike this requirement. Secondly, regarding reconsideration of conditions, we support the clarification in the wording. It would be confusing to the general public without this clarification. In reference to the reconsideration of conditions process itself, an amendment is needed. With approximately 300 dogs on the Dangerous Dog Registry now, and the likelihood for the registry to double by the year 2030, an amendment to address who will be granted a reconsideration hearing is needed. Lastly, regarding the cost of care portion of this bill that deals only with cruelty cases, we are pleased to see that the Anne Arundel County administrative process is being aligned with the Maryland state law that was enacted almost 2 years ago. It is heartbreaking to see these cases linger in confinement at the shelter for years while the owners go through the legal process. We have been urging the county executive to bring this part of the bill forward for many months now. Finally, there will be some relief for these animals who have suffered immensely at their owners' hands. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Mazur?
Good evening. My name is Linda Mazur, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Animal Welfare Council, and tonight I'm going to give some insight on how we formulate recommendations. When we review proposed legislation, especially if the legislation is in response to a tragic incident, we believe that it is important to put the legislation in context and give objective, dispassionate advice. The first two questions we ask are, what does the shelter data show, and what do the other Maryland County codes say? In reference to Bill 1-24, here's what we found. In the past 5 years, Animal Care and Control has investigated over 6,000 bite and animal attack cases, and only 28 dogs, far less than 1%, were deemed to be vicious. The vast majority of bite cases result in warning letters and citations only. This does not look like Animal Care and Control is being heavy-handed in their vicious determinations. As you know, Maryland has 23 counties. 22 counties have levels of proof of preponderance of the evidence for dangerous or vicious determinations. One county, which is Washington County, has clear and convincing for their determinations. None have evidentiary requirements of eyewitness or video. This bill, if approved as written, Anne Arundel County will be an extreme outlier. In the case that has prompted the proposed changes in this bill, we want to be fair to the dogs, of course, but what about the cat in this case? A beloved domesticated cat was killed while on its own property. Shouldn't we be sure that our laws protect the safety of all animals and residents in Anne Arundel County? We urge you to vote in favor of Amendment 6 and strike the requirement for eyewitness or video evidence in a vicious determination. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know why I can't get your name. Mr. M.
No, you got it great.
I did.
Imperato, it's perfect.
Imperato, okay.
Yeah, nailed it.
Thank you.
I guess I'll print this out next time so I don't embarrass my colleagues on the Animal Welfare Council. My name is Dr. Kip Imperato. I am a resident of Glen Burnie, and thank you for allowing me to speak before the council again tonight. It's hard to believe it has already been 6 years since the last time I provided testimony on a subject very near and dear to my heart, the Community Cat Bill, which despite its imperfections, I remain extremely proud of the overall positive effects the community has provided since becoming the Community Cat Law. Back then, I'd stated it was my professional opinion that there is no duty more draining and demoralizing that veterinarians must perform than euthanizing healthy pets. And it is that same subject that brings me here today, only instead of healthy cats in the woods, is now my goal to protect otherwise healthy dogs that have been deemed dangerous, potentially dangerous, and even vicious. Unlike the aforementioned community cats, these dogs are people's pets, with often a very strongly forged human-animal bond. I can plainly testify this evening that no part of my job is more emotionally taxing than to sever that bond because of behavioral reasons as opposed to the medical reasons, which are far more common. I've had to do it many times, and each time I knew it was the right thing to do, and even the owners knew it was the right thing to do, but only after repeated bites, despite my warnings, do owners ever get to that point on their own. Pets are like children, and I generally wonder how many parents of school shooters are still in denial about the horrors their babies were capable of committing. Was there anything they could have done to prevent it? Does love blind you from obvious warning signs? Animal behavior, it turns out, is not too dissimilar from human behavior. Both nature and nurture are equally important, which ultimately I believe is what we are here to debate tonight. How long does it take to nurture a vicious dog before reconsidering it a potentially dangerous dog? How long does it take for nature to catch up with a vicious dog? One of those questions has a definite answer, and we must find the balance between those questions here today. 20 years? Definitely. 10 years? Maybe. 5 years? Probably. Less than that, I think it's too uncertain to risk setting the dog up for failure, because failure means more bites, more injuries, more heartbreak for families, the community, and the veterinarians tasked with finding the ultimate solution. I don't want to punish families or dogs. I want to set them up for success. If we do not ensure an appropriate time frame for reconsideration, animals will reoffend. Even more excessive penalties will be pursued by victims, ultimately leading to death of more animals. I must be clear. I don't want to punish. I want to protect, which surely is one of the actual purposes of government. I do not think it is unreasonable to ask owners to protect their pets from dangerous situations unless a substantial change in mitigating circumstances arises within a 5-year period. 5 years is a long time, and yet it feels like I was just here testifying for the cats just yesterday. And if I'm really honest, as much as I hate to admit it, even I have less energy now than I did 6 years ago. So I won't fight you as briskly as I did then if 5 years is determined too long a period for reconsideration. But I do ask that is more than 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, was that 2 minutes exactly?
Well done. Well done. That was it for, y'all can be dismissed. That was it for our folks who had signed up in advance. Is there anyone here who wants to testify on Bill 1-24 at this time? Please come forward. There are 6 seats, so state your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Sandra Salvatore, 721 Red Cedar Road, Annapolis, Maryland. One question is, I did not see Amendment 7 out front. Could I please get a copy of that so I can make a comment on that? Thank you. Okay, 2 seconds. I mean, overall, and I want to make sure I'm very clear about this, I am support of when people who are bad owners create bad dogs. Dogs are not based on breed or any other, classification, are not inherently bad. The owners are the problem. Now, are the owners the problem because they are clueless and careless, or because they might know that their dogs are a little challenging, hyper, what have you, but they don't have the money to train? Trainers here in this town are ridiculously expensive. I don't see training in here anywhere. I don't see a chance for remediation on some of the lower classifications, and that bothers me a lot because that tells me that there's no intent to try to solve a problem, because this doesn't solve problems. This creates, to me, different challenges and problems, and you always have to consider, just like we do in a court of law, that the reason why we say presumed innocent until proven guilty is because there's a lot of factors in every single situation. And I don't honestly think that this bill quite yet addresses some of those factors that I think are really important and may trap people who are well-meaning, well-intentioned pet parents, and then things happen and somebody can perceive a nuance. For example, I still don't, on the background, the burden of proof is in the preponderance of the evidence. Well, that's great, except this then seeks to strip that out, this bill, the way it's currently structured. I actually am in support of the fact of putting the cost on the cruelty component onto the owner. I think that's great. But my concern still is on this bill, and again, the bottom line is I would love to even help try to kind of close out some of the gaps I do see. The potentially dangerous or dangerous, again, who's making that determination? The agency. Who is the agency? There's no quarantine opportunity. Instead, they're being put into prison and jail.
Ma'am.
I would like to, my bottom line is that I would like to see this worked a little bit more so that pet parents have an opportunity and not suffer, somewhat to what the panel was speaking.
Thank you.
I would like to keep working on this.
Thank you. The public hearing on Bill number 1-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 1-21.
Bill number 124, an ordinance concerning public safety, animal care and control, potentially dangerous, and vicious animals.
Mr. Hunt, we'll let you get settled. Is there any, do we have any questions for the administration at this time, or do we want to move right into amendments?
I have a question.
Oh, Ms. Hummer.
Yes, so much of the focus of this bill is about dangerous or vicious animals. However, in section 12-4504, redemption of impounded animals, number 2, it says, at the request of an animal owner and upon a showing of good cause, the agency may waive some or all of the redemption fees. I just want to clarify that that pertains to any animal at the shelter, not just ones that are under investigation as vicious or dangerous. Is that correct?
Cali County Supervising County Attorney. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I think that's a wonderful provision that we have, that the animal control now has some leeway to waive fees given different circumstances for pet owners who may have become separated for their animals. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 6.
Amendment number 6. This amendment removes the requirement for eyewitness or digital evidence for an animal to be designated as vicious.
Ms. Ledbetter, this is your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is the result of testimony and conversations received from citizens, including those who sit on the Animal Welfare and Animal Matters Council. I found it very compelling that both the Animal Welfare Council and Animal Matters both unanimously supported removing this particular language from the bill. I think that speaks volumes in and of itself. One of my personal things that stuck out the most to me is the fact that we have 2 bite officers and about 2,000 cases a year. It's a heavy workload as it is to have to go and also have these videos and track down the videos or track down the eyewitnesses. I've heard lots of compelling evidence that oftentimes there is no eyewitness that is verbal. The eyewitness could be a child, and it could be a traumatic situation if you require that child to testify. And that the burden of proof is going to be higher to label a dog vicious than it is to convict a human of murder. And that seems a bit out of balance to me. So this amendment is the result of all of that. A motion to adopt.
Second, Palmer.
Mr. Hunt, you want to respond to amendment number 6?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'd urge the council to reject this amendment. There seems to be a lot of confusion about what exactly this amendment is what this language is intended to achieve. And I want to be very clear with the council. This is not saying someone has to witness the actual attack. It's not saying a recording has to be made of the actual attack. One of the witnesses earlier testified about a Ring camera video capturing a dog coming up onto a porch. That would absolutely be admissible. What this language in this bill is trying to prevent is a situation where you deem a dog as vicious and the county euthanizes it based solely on hearsay evidence. The witness does not have to see an attack. They just have to observe events or circumstances that indicate that there was an attack, and that is what would be heard before the Animal Matters Commission. We feel very strongly that having some sort of in-person or recorded statement is important because the owner of a dog who is accused of being a vicious dog or committing an attack, if the dog is euthanized, they're being deprived of their property under Maryland law, and they should have the opportunity to cross-examine or ask questions of the person making the allegations or speaking about the events or circumstances that they observed. So that is why that language is in there. It is not saying that someone has to personally witness the attack itself and come testify about it.
Ms. Rodvian?
Thank you. So I just, going to this whole question of the standard of proof, even though this takes out the digital evidence and or an eyewitness to the event, isn't if you go back to section D at the bottom of page 2, we still have language in there that says determines beyond a reasonable doubt that the animal did one of the things on the list. So that's still the highest standard that we have in criminal law. So I feel like that is, do you feel like that, one, am I reading it correctly? And two, is that not enough?
That is correct. However, we felt it important to clarify in the law that hearsay testimony is not sufficient to deem a dog as vicious, which is why this particular provision about witness testimony is in there.
Ms. Ledbetter.
This is perhaps I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to address this to Ms. Kenny. So with the level of evidence having to be beyond a reasonable doubt, if we were in a criminal trial and there was hearsay evidence, is it possible in a criminal trial for there to be enough hearsay evidence that a jury may find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, even though that evidence is hearsay?
Cali County Supervising County Attorney. I'll caveat my response with my statement that I'm not a criminal attorney, so I'll start there. There is a difference between, setting forth what the burden of proof is, the beyond a reasonable doubt burden of proof, and then taking this extra step to codify what the type of evidence is that is necessary in order to make that finding. So the language that's in the bill as it's written right now does take that extra step to make sure that the commission that's looking at this is looking for a certain type of evidence in order to make that finding. Taking that away, I can't say for sure what the commission would do. They may base it on hearsay or other circumstantial evidence, which may or may not, meet that beyond a reasonable doubt standard. So, as Mr. Hunt had stated, the goal of the language was try to codify what that evidence should be that they're looking for, make sure that it's not based on a hearsay finding like that.
Madam Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That would be, in this case, so it's the commission that is hearing the evidence. Because the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, whatever evidence is provided, whether that be circumstantial or not, it would need to be enough evidence that the commission would find beyond a reasonable doubt.
Cali County Supervising County Attorney, yes, they would have to have enough evidence to meet that standard, and it is the highest standard.
Thank you.
Mr. Volke.
I was just going to help Ms. Ledbetter out. There are exceptions to hearsay. So there are certain types of hearsay that are deemed more reliable hearsay than other types of hearsay. So as a result, in the law, there are certain hearsay exceptions that allow things to come into evidence. So I'll just add that for you. So to make a confusing area even more confusing, and many attorneys don't even get all that. So.
Ms. Radvian.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, I guess I don't know how the process works, but I'm guessing you don't necessarily have, a judge making determinations about the admissibility of evidence as you go through the process when you're, making these decisions about an animal. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Yeah.
Okay, so there's not inadmissible evidence because it's hearsay. Everything goes
No,
in.
In administrative hearings, hearsay, they have relaxed standards of evidence. Hearsay is generally admissible. That's a lawyer joke, sorry. Hearsay is allowed generally in administrative hearings.
Would the administration be more comfortable with an amendment? I certainly understand Ms. Ledbetter's, I actually understand the idea of getting away from the, having to have that very specific type of evidence, even though, you could, I think one of the folks that testified described a situation where, a child was alone in the room and, the child had dog bites. Nobody saw that. Nobody videotaped it. But common sense tells you there is no doubt. There's not another way that a child got those bite marks. Would it be something that you could consider as an alternate, something like there must be some sort of evidence like hearsay alone, evidence that is hearsay alone cannot be sufficient to, make a determination about an animal?
I think we'd have to think about that and figure out what exactly the language would look like. Probably have it be a little more narrow and focused, just beyond saying hearsay alone is insufficient. But
I'm just thinking, I think I'm a little rusty on some of the classes in law school too, but I vaguely recall that you can't have a first degree homicide based solely on, an admission or one person's testimony. There has to be something. I'm rusty. Does that sound right to anybody in the room? What's that? Corroboration. Yeah, so, that could be a similar comparison since we've been talking a lot about how this compares to human criminal law.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple questions. So just to put this in context, we're specifically talking about the agency designating a dog as vicious, correct?
Correct.
Right. There are 4 conditions in the law or in this bill that determines that designation. Is it one of the 4 or is it all of the 4 to be designated vicious? I mean, I didn't see the and or the or in there. It just had. So 1,
Yeah,
2, and 3 has to happen, correct?
It's 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Correct. I'm glad you said that.
Yep.
So when I read this, and just read the definition of vicious, because this is what we're referring to, the agency may designate an animal as vicious if, after consideration of the animal's demeanor and prior history, and any evidence of mitigating circumstances, the agency finds that the animal cannot be safely maintained without threatening members of the public or other animals, and determines beyond a reasonable doubt that the animal, one, because the amendment is strikes, basically is aimed at number 1, and this is the condition for number 1, killed or inflicted severe injury or a person or domesticated animal based on testimony from an eyewitness to the events supporting the designation or through authenticated digital evidence showing the events supporting the designation. So this amendment from line 1 down to line 4 basically strikes that from this designation. And so I guess and this may even go to what the Ms. Rodman was referring to as, so if that line is removed, we're saying, and to the sponsor, based on testimony from you're saying you don't want it to be that specific type of evidence because there could be other mitigating circumstances that could be included in the determination of whether or not a dog is designated as vicious?
So it is, it's eliminating that language. To be clear, Mr. Smith, too, it would eliminate that, if you're looking at the bill, it's the bold.
Right, correct.
Beginning in line 48 until
on page
3, line 2, and then also in the next number 2. It's the same language is repeated. It strikes it from there as well.
Correct. You're saying having that specific language potentially leaves out other extenuating or
it becomes an incredibly high standard to meet, and it could result in animals that already, I mean, as the testimony mentioned, there's a very, very small percentage of animals who are designated vicious. And the concern is with this extra standard of proof required that vicious animals who are a threat to the community and to the neighborhood will not be found to be vicious because the standard of proof is going to become too high.
So to the admin, why does the animal board or commission, they're okay with this? Or why are you two a different?
The Animal Matters Commission, right? I think there's some confusion and some disagreement about the language, and that I think we believe that this is drafted in such a way that this requirement is much broader and allows in much more evidence and testimony than what some other folks believe.
Thank you much.
If I could weigh in, I do think if this amendment were to pass this evening, it does seem that the current language in the bill has created enough confusion that we might. I support Amendment 6. There may be language that needs to come back to better clarify the intent of the administration, because it's clearly from testimony we've received this evening and from testimony we've received in our inboxes, it's clearly not clear. So we might want to revisit any additional wording, if this language is successfully struck from this bill tonight. Is there any further discussion? Oh, Ms. Fiedler, excuse me.
Just for clarity. In the example that was given during the public testimony, you have a young child who's nonverbal.
Right.
Child is attacked by an animal. I'm going to say animal, not a specific type. Based on the way that the bill is worded, since the child is nonverbal, number one is off the table. There's no video and there's no eyewitness who can testify.
There would be, I mean, someone observed an animal bite on the child, right? And they would have had to observe an animal I mean, how do you determine which animal bit a child if you don't have any witnesses who can testify as to what they observed? Right?
Thank you.
Can I add to that? Would it help, maybe? Kelly Kenny, Supervising County Attorney. I think in the scenario, the two different scenarios that were discussed tonight, I think that both of them actually would meet the standard that's set forth in the bill as it's written right now, because it doesn't require, and I think this is where the misconception is coming in a little bit, it does not require that somebody witness the actual attack. It requires somebody to witness the events leading up to the designation. So in that scenario, if you have a 2-year-old child in another room next to you and they're with a dog and you hear the altercation and you go in and maybe the attack is done, you didn't witness, the adult did not witness the attack, but they have certainly witnessed the events that lead to that designation because they've walked into the room, they see the dog there, they see the child covered in blood. So that would be the type of evidence that would be sufficient under this as written. And similarly, in the video example that was given tonight, that was discussed a little bit, and Mr. Hunt touched on this as well, that would also be enough because you would have that video that video evidence there that would be supporting the events that led up to that designation. So I think in both of those scenarios, you would actually be able to meet this standard that's in the bill.
Ms. Radvian.
Thank you. Just to clarify, when you say the standard that's in the bill, you mean as it's currently written, not with the amendment?
That's correct, as it's currently written, because again, it just requires the eyewitness to testify about the events supporting the designation. So again, you could testify, I heard my child scream, I walked into the room, the dog is covered in blood and the child's covered in blood. You know, things of that nature would be an eyewitness to the events that would lead to that vicious designation.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Ledbetter.
It's not so much a question as it is a statement. I think for me, and I can appreciate the feedback from the table, when we have two advisory commissions who are subject matter experts, and they're both unanimously against particular language in the bill, I'm just going to say again, I think that speaks volumes. If the council wants to work to try to add some clarifying language once this is removed, I'm 100% in support of that idea. But I think that this language, with basically unanimous opposition from both Animal Matters and Animal Welfare, I think that's a strong indicator that we're not on the right track with this particular language.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you. I would just share the concept that comes to mind for me from a legal standpoint is res ipsa loquitur, which is the thing speaks for itself, right? The idea, Ms. Kenny, your example, there's nobody else in the room. There's a dog, there's a child, a parent heard a scream. The thing speaks for itself, right? You know what happened. You don't have to have somebody there directly watching it to testify and say, and I saw the dog, and I saw it clamp its jaw down, and I saw what happened. There are reasonable inferences that a reasonable trier of fact can draw from the evidence that is presented, including I was an eyewitness to the injury on the child. If alternatively there is authenticated video evidence, which the authentication piece of that is where I'm curious, how are you going to do that? What rules are you using for authentication? But that's a sidebar. If you have that, that certainly could be another component that you use to make this designation. But the eyewitness component does not require video, and the video is not required for a vicious designation, right? That's where I think there's some confusion, because I've gotten some testimony from people saying you have to have video to be able to get a vicious designation, which is not how this reads. So I just want to clarify that point, because I think for some people reading this, maybe they forget the or that's in the middle of those two statements. It's either eyewitness or authenticated video, however you're going to authenticate it.
Seeing no more lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 6.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Nay.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Amendment number 6 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 7.
Amendment number 7, this amendment clarifies that a petition to reconsider applies only to reconsideration of the conditions of a potentially dangerous or dangerous animal order.
Ms. Ledbetter, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 weeks ago, when we were debating my amendment of that night regarding the time frame for reconsideration, we as a council actually got ourselves a little bit confused whether or not we were talking about reconsideration of conditions or reconsideration of the label. And honestly, if we're getting confused while we're discussing it, I think there's a high chance probability that a citizen may get confused as well. So this is just language to help make sure that it's 100% clear about what is being reconsidered.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Thank you. Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Rodvian, second.
Mr. Hunt,
No, we're fine with this amendment.
is there any further conversation about amendment number 7? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 7.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 7 has been adopted.
Thank you. Bill number 1-24 will be heard on March 4th, as amended on March 4th, 2024. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 3-24.
Bill number 324, an ordinance concerning zoning, maritime districts, neighborhood marina zoning district.
Ms. Fiedler, this is your bill. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have discussed this bill at length at our work session and previous council meetings. This bill fills a gap between MA1 and MA2, is very narrowly tailored to protect the characteristics of residential communities, and I ask for my colleagues' support this evening.
Mr. Hunt, do you have any further thoughts on Bill number 3-24?
No, we're said all we can say on it, so we're good.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 3-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There was one submission on Bill number 324. Everyone here did get an email. It's included in that summary that's posted online, and it will be added to this part of the meeting record.
Thank you. I don't have anybody signed up in advance. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak on Bill number 3-24, please come up to the table, have a seat. When it's your turn, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no movement in the audience, we'll now close the public hearing on Bill number 3-24. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 3-24.
Bill number 3-24, an ordinance concerning zoning, maritime districts, neighborhood marina zoning district.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none?
Madam Chair, sorry,
Oh,
I was a late hit on my light there. This is really a question for the sponsor. I believe that one piece of testimony that we did receive was just mentioning their concern that the number was too low, that 20 wasn't the right threshold, and I just would like to hear your thoughts on that. If it's just like, how do you, I feel like maybe we talked about this at the work session or the last meeting, but I would just like to hear your thoughts on that particular, the number 20.
Sure. So the bill started out with 15, and that really came from looking in the area that was the initial focus for the bill, but then realizing 15 was actually on the lower end compared to the number of slips that were in that general vicinity, just increased it ever so slightly to 20. It was really more of an art, not science.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for the public consumption, with this particular bill, again, this does not change any currently designated zoning classifications that the map currently has for Anne Arundel County. 0. This is creating the option during comprehensive rezoning or potentially other efforts to designate some areas with these classifications. And so, just for the record, we're not changing anything on any map, whether you support or don't support this bill. It doesn't change anything. Is that correct? Just making it to the sponsor?
That is 100% correct.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 3-24.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 3-24 has been passed.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 4-24.
Bill number 424, an ordinance concerning personnel.
This is administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll wait for my panel of folks to get up here. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me, I have Hannah Dyer, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Kelly Lovett and Jackie Atkinson from the Office of Personnel, Chris Trumbauer from the Budget Office, and Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. We did discuss this bill at the last work session and have met with all of you individually to discuss the details of this bill. I'll turn it over to Hannah Dyer if she wants to add anything.
So I can, this bill is kind of the result of a work group at the county executive's direction that started meeting in June of this year through November, and was tasked with looking for recommendations to improve our personnel processes based on feedback kind of gathered consistently across our department heads. So you all have received a copy of the full work group report. There are a couple dozen recommendations in there. Many can be accomplished administratively, but several of them require changes to the code, and that's what's included in the bill before you. And if you'd like, I can review them very briefly again, although I know I've talked to you all at length about all of this several times now. So I'll leave that up to you. But otherwise, we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there any discussion at this time? Mr. Volkey.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Trumbauer. Thanks for staying. Question for you, because my understanding is right now, the budget office does the work that it looks like it's going to move over to personnel. Is that right? This reclass review?
Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. Well, so council member, doing the work, it depends on what you mean by that. So sure. The budget office at the moment, through the budget process, we do have some level of position control. Right. But largely the day-to-day mechanical things of reviewing classification changes or promotional opportunities or anything having to do with that, Office of Personnel does that work. The budget office reviews everything as part of the annual budget process. And then most changes that are to occur are done annually in that process. And then ultimately the council, as the final fiscal authority, gets to approve or reject those through that budget process.
Okay. Probably an inartful question, so I'll try to ask a better one. So when you talk about position control and how that's vested in the budget office at this point, how does this bill change that, if at all?
Well, council member, I would actually, while I was waiting for this bill to come up, I read the auditor's summary of the legislation, which I read and thought that was a pretty good summary. So I would endorse the auditor's characterization of it. But it does, I think, make some streamlining changes to the existing process. And as I'm sure, I wasn't at the work session, but I'm sure Ms. Dyer went through all the reasons why this bill came forward. But we are, I think, in the middle of a period of time where hiring people is more difficult, and we're competing with the private industry, and we've got some high vacancy levels, and there seemed to be some general interest among departments to expedite some of those processes.
And if I can also add, this does not change position control. In order to increase the number of positions approved with the budget, we would still have to come to council to get that approval. The changes here are about the administration of the classification plan, the pay plan, reclassifications, anything that requires those personnel studies that maybe actions are included in the budget, the annual budget, but personnel is still doing those personnel studies for those kinds of changes in coordination with the budget office's review and preparation of the annual budget.
May I ask a follow-up?
You may.
Thank you. So, and appreciate that answer. With the classification changes, so at present, without this legislation being passed, budget office looks at the classifications, brings those down in front of the council, and then we vote on them in the annual budget. Is that right?
Chris Trumbauer, budget officer. So there's a companion bill to the budget ordinance. We call it the personnel bill. Sometimes it's split into positions and pay bills. I think last year we did all as one, maybe. So that is indirectly part of the budget process, but it's not part of the ABAO, which is the actual budget ordinance.
But this is going to allow outside of budget for personnel to reclassify positions. Is that true or false?
I will defer to Ms. Dyer.
There's already some of that can occur currently, and maybe we can have the Office of Personnel speak to that if you'd like.
Sure.
Hi, Jackie Atkinson. Jackie Atkinson, Office of Personnel. As it currently stands, we do the studies outside of the budget process, and then we do come before council for you to vote on it. You have history of relying on our studies, and so as Ms. Dyer stated, we're not going to do anything different. We're still going to do the complete studies for vacant and occupied positions as we've been doing.
But I think just to add on to that again, there is currently, if we are reclassifying to a lower classification with a lower pay grade, we can do that without council approval. Yes. If there's a promotion, maybe in a promotional series, that classification count can change. So this would give greater flexibility to the administration in the middle of the year to do reclassifications to an equal or greater grade level, again, with those classification studies that you just heard about.
Understood. So the way I'm seeing this, and I'm just trying to sort through what's being said to make sure I'm clear, is at present, for a reclass to go up, that would require you to come in front of the council. But this bill would not require that. It would come in front of the council at budget time when it had already been done, and if the council says, well, we don't like that, then the council could undo it. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that's a bit of a difference because the council is effectively giving our authority over that to a degree to the administration and saying, administration, you all do this, and then we'll just kind of check your work, as opposed to what's happening now where the administration has to bring it to us and we check your work in real time before anything happens. Is that a fair way to put it?
That is one of the changes proposed in this bill, yes.
Right. So then I guess, Mr. Trumbauer, you sat on this body for 8 years. Would you, as a member of this body, endorse this kind of change where this body is giving up that level of control to the administration? I know that's a tough question. If you don't have an answer,
Chris
you can
Trumbauer,
tell
budget
me no.
officer. So you're asking executive administration, cabinet position Trumbauer, what council member, legislative branch Trumbauer
Go
would have
back, put
done
on your old hat.
8
Sit up
years
here with
ago.
me.
I
Yeah.
mean, look, council member, we had our fair share of personnel issues when I was on the council. You may remember some of them. I don't know what I would have thought at that time on this particular piece. I remember being frustrated that it seemed like there was a lot of bureaucracy in hiring positions that I was interested in, and why did it take so long, and can't we do this better? So on that side, some reform would be good. As far as is the council giving up some of its authority if this legislation were to pass? I would say objectively that's probably factual. But I think the legislation spells out very well, and the legislative summary and everything else, exactly what's being done and what the rationale behind it is. The fact of the matter is, we have a professional office of personnel for a reason. You all are 7 members of a legislative body that have a lot going on, and you are the ultimate fiscal authority. I think it's up to you to decide how much in the weeds you want to get into individual personnel decisions of a workforce that is greater than 4,000 full-time employees. I'll leave it at that if you'll let me.
Thank you.
Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but I'm thinking of it right now. Is there any requirement, and maybe it's already in there, is there any requirement that personnel notifies the council of a change?
So there is an annual reporting requirement with the presentation of the annual classification plan and pay plan that requires all of the mid-year changes to be identified, along with the number of positions that those changes affected and whether they're filled or vacant. And at that annual point, you would then use that annual report to give the up or down vote on each of those changes.
Okay, and I guess it makes sense that, since we only have the opportunity to make any changes in the annual report at the, at budget time once a year, that ongoing reports maybe don't. I'm curious what my colleagues think of that or what you guys think of that. I guess I heard your opinion, Ms. Dyer. Thank you.
Ms. Ledbetter.
I believe Ms. Fiedler brought this up at the work session, but I just want to make sure I'm understood the answer that you gave and that my memory is reflecting accurately. So if there's a reclassification up, so it's to a higher level of pay, and it happens mid-year, and then you come to the council at budget time, and we have the ability as a council to approve or not approve that reclassification. I believe the question that Ms. Fiedler had asked at the work session was this employee who's been whether hired or promoted into the higher pay, even though if the council were to decide we do not approve collectively of that higher reclassification, that the employee would still, while the classification may not change, the money, the increased pay would not be taken away from the employee. Am I recollecting that conversation?
Right, and that's for any employee put into a position that has been, the classification plan for that classification has been changed, which could be a higher pay grade. Then yes, if council rejected that change at the annual point of review, then the personnel officer would have to reassign that individual to the next closest classification plan based on their qualifications and the job duties, and it has to be done in accordance with pay provisions that are already in code, and so that individual's pay would not be changed. I'm going to look down at Lori just to make sure I represented that accurately.
Lori Blair, Classmeyer, Deputy County Attorney. They would be put into a position for which they're qualified and similar in scope or pay. And also considering any salary adjustments that have been permitted in the interim.
So what I'm trying to wrap my head around is I'm trying to follow the money, meaning perhaps in that type of situation, what the council may not be comfortable with is not necessarily that the reclassification is what is disagreed with, but perhaps it's the budget allocation of more money. So I'm trying to figure out who ultimately in that situation ends up being the fiscal authority as far as where the money is being spent or how the money is being spent.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm trying to I'm not 100% clear on that. If there's
So I guess, and let me know if I'm not understanding your question clearly, but I think my response is that, generally council is not approving individual salaries. You're approving the appropriation authority, not a personal services item. So I think at that the work group and informing this bill, we made a judgment call that in that kind of situation, we did not want an individual's salary altered. But we did recognize that we wanted, if council made a decision to get rid of that classification plan, classification change, whatever the action was, that, we didn't want to affect the individuals that had already been moved, but we did want to affect everybody moving forward. So that's kind of where I see.
That helps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on percentages. On page 6, line 36 through 43, the pay rate not exceeding more than 50% of the prior grade. How did you land at 50%? Is that looking at the grades and just how they differ? How did you land on 50% as the high end?
So the work group did consider data from a couple of years about hiring, in certain categories at the base and then in certain tiers above that. Our intent was to provide greater flexibility for the appointing authority in particular. And we had a variety of opinions, and this was kind of a compromise position that we ended on. But I won't say that there's, anything concrete to point to for that 50%.
Madam Chair, may I ask a follow-up?
You may.
So with a compromise, I would imagine some others suggested higher, some suggested lower.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hummer.
So, as the fiscal authority, we approve the budget at the end of the year, and each department has a budget which includes the salaries for their budgets. And so if in the course of a year, personnel makes a recommendation to change a classification in there, any increase in salary that would go along with that classification would still have to fit into the annual budget for that position. So personnel would not be making a decision without council final authority to go over budget. Am I correct in saying that?
Right. We would, if there was some change that we expected would cause us to go over budget, then we would definitely still have to come back to council for additional appropriations.
So these reclassifications and salary changes would be within the approved budget of the council?
Yes.
So that would not be, we wouldn't be forfeiting our determinations for the annual budget when it came to that. It would just be a change.
And that's already, we already have internal processes for these personnel actions before they come to council. And the budget office is included in kind of the routing of the review of those proposed personnel actions, including, the Office of Personnel, the CAO, et cetera, for exactly that reason, that we want those eyes on these proposed changes to make sure that we're staying within our appropriation authority.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you. So this all dovetails into my other question about this bill, and it's sort of, I guess the best way to put it is, none of the provisions in this bill are necessarily offensive in a vacuum, if that makes sense, right? For each individual person that you're doing this for, all the items that you note here, they tend to make sense, right? Specifically, you guys give us this great chart, which I appreciate, that lays out the approval required, the current law, the proposed, and so for initial pay on non-rep employees, for instance, and the ability to go above the minimum and what the requirements are for that. I don't see that in an individual capacity as being problematic, but if you couple the net effect of being able to increase over the minimum with anywhere from 15% to 50% above the minimum, with only the personnel officer making that determination. And then you couple that with the reclass ability to go up a class without coming in front of the council, and you see a series of these things happen across a 4,000 person plus workforce, all of a sudden the net impact of that gets pretty big. And while you certainly could do that in a given department based on the constraints of the annual budget ordinance, what I see happening, because I've been through 5 of these budgets now, is we're going to come in, we're going to hear how the department used their budgets, but they've got a ton of vacancies, and now all of a sudden they spent up to the number that they needed to get to in terms of their personnel number that they had, and they're going to say, well, we've spent our budget there and we still have vacancies, so we need more money, and so then all of a sudden it's going to necessarily require, hey, we need to hire appropriation because we've increased our personnel costs over here. Tell me where I'm missing this, because this is the way that I see all of this sort of expanding out very quickly.
So I think I'll make a comment and then I'll pass it back to Mr. Trumbauer. But what I was going to say is that this goes back to a comment he made earlier, that the Office of Personnel is our professional organization responsible for making sure that the county is maintaining an equitable merit system across all county employees. And so I don't see a scenario, a doomsday scenario like what you're describing happening, because we have the Office of Personnel reviewing all of these actions, not in a vacuum, but as a comprehensive classification plan, merit system of the entire county.
Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So as I understand the gist of your question, Council Member, I don't see a great danger in what you're describing, that the legislation passes, all of a sudden departments can hire people, and so they kind of go over their budget. And the reason is because every year we look at each individual department, we look at their total personal costs, we factor in everything over time where it's appropriate, attrition, the pay packages, all kinds of things, and we model that. We bring that forward to you in the budget, and once it's passed, the departments have to live within those means, right? And then we have some good debates during budget with the auditor about, well, which should their turnover assumption be, and all of this. So to me, if departments are able, to hire more people, or they're able to promote more people, that will all be baked in to the budgeting process, where we as a budget office estimate what the total personal costs will be. But it doesn't give departments any extra authority to go over that.
May I follow?
You may.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not suggesting they're going to overspend their budgets, because I don't think they will. I'm suggesting they're going to spend up to what they have. And then the next year they're going to come back and say, well, all of our people are here and we've raised their starting salary, 50% above the minimum, and we've reclassed some people. So we've spent our whole personnel budget. We need more next year because we still have vacancies. So we've got all these people who are here, they're filling positions. We didn't overspend our budget. We just need more. The other piece of this, which is a whole other piece of the discussion, is this then takes up your non-discretionary costs every year, because if you increase everyone's pay, that's going to add to what it costs in terms of pension contributions. It's going to add to what it costs in terms of COLAs every year when we do that. And so I think that's why for many, many years, the council has had these relatively strict guidelines on how far personnel can go. Maybe they need some tweaking, but the appointing authority had to go to minimum. And if you wanted to go above minimum up to 15%, you need a personnel officer. We're literally saying appointing officer can go to where the personnel could before. Personnel can go above what even the county exec could do, because the county exec couldn't even approve it over 35% before. And now we're saying you can go all the way to 50. So I just think this is taking off in a big way some serious checks and balances that the council had often had to say to personnel and budget and other departments, don't do anything too big that's going to tie our hands, because we are the ones who have to fund all this. So that's my concern with it. I hope I'm not sounding like I'm too far off base on this, and maybe my scenario is maybe I'm more concerned about it than you are, right? Maybe you all think this is not going to happen quite the way I'm anticipating it, but I do think some of these changes are pretty significant. In the aggregate, they could add up to a lot of money.
Seeing no other comments from my colleagues, we'll open the public hearing on Bill number 4-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
I do not have anybody signed up to speak on Bill 4-24. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on 4-24? Please come to the table, have a seat. When it's your turn, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Svensson.
Kurt Svensson, Arnold, Maryland. There's an old adage, where you stand depends on where you sit. About 20 or so years ago, I was sitting in the county budget office and viewed the county council's seizing of position control authority from the executive branch as a violation of the county charter provisions. I wanted the county executive to challenge it, but she and the other leaders chose not to. Well, the sky didn't fall. And now that I'm sitting as a citizen, I'm grateful the legislative branch has this authority. This is a big bill Pay attention to page 3, 61110, control of positions. Y'all have talked about this. You're right on, Mr. Volke. I've said it so many times before. The discretionary decisions that well, I guess it isn't you. It's that the personnel officer, it's what the departments make the non-discretionary costs of the future. This control of positions, this is a power grab. The legislative branch needs to stand opposed to it in the name of checks and balances. Furthermore, the legislation as proposed defies the provisions of the county charter. Section 516 of the county charter, please read the thing, clearly declares the control of positions to be a power and duty of the budget officer, not the personnel officer. Classification studies are not position control. Position control is more about fiscal impact, resource allocation, and work programs. You can kind of sort of undo position control, but not really. It's already under the, as was described by the staff up here. So this is a classic case of letting the camel's nose get into the tent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Yes, my name's Maria Hartman. I live at 795 Blenheim in Savannah Park. I've never come before the council before. I just started looking into legislation and such things. And even though I did not come so prepared, I agree completely with this gentleman here and Mr. Volke, who I heard articulate this much better than I really came prepared to do. I just wanted to say, I think that it is wisdom to keep the powers that you have as a city council rather than to give them away. I also think there are other things that come packaged with the bill that are also questionable and that you ought to use your judgment on with your experience rather than cede that to somebody else. And that's really all I have to say, unless you have any specific things you would like me to comment on. I'm just nobody really.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
The public hearing on Bill number 4-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 4-24.
Bill number 424, an ordinance concerning personnel.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, I'm going to make a motion to hold this bill for another 2 weeks to the March 4th meeting, and I would ask that one of my colleagues second it. And then
I'll second it because I was about to make the same motion.
Thank you.
But we have a technical amendment.
Yeah, we can withdraw. I'll
withdraw my second.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1, this technical amendment removes a duplicate reference to the criminal justice coordinator in the additional exempt positions and corrects an erroneous reference to the pay plan for the court and state's attorney.
Is there a motion to adopt? Is there a second?
Rodney.
Fiedler.
Mr. Hunt, this is your technical amendment, I believe.
We have a strong stance against duplicate references and erroneous references. So ask the council to adopt this technical amendment.
Great. Without further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been adopted. Madam Chair, you do have the option of letting this go out as an amended bill. It's technical, but you can choose to let it go out as an amended bill, and it will buy the 2 weeks' time, I believe.
Ms. Radvian.
I just wanted to say, I know Mr. Svensson may think I never listened to him, but he was very persuasive tonight, and I do listen to you.
So rather than hold the bill, we will just bring the bill back as an amended bill. This bill will be heard. Bill number 4-24 will come back on March 4th as amended, March 4th, 2024. Madam Secretary, please read Bill number 5-24.
Bill number 524, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, Board of Education, supplementary appropriation, and transfer of funds.
This is an administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table are Matt Stansky from Anne Arundel County Public Schools and Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. We discussed this bill at the work session last week. The intent is to make a supplementary appropriation and transfer appropriations for unanticipated revenues to the local education fund for fiscal year 2024. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Stansky to briefly talk about it.
Thank you for the record. Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer in Arundel County Public Schools. And we walked through this during the work session. Happy to answer any questions the council may have this evening.
Are there any questions from my colleagues regarding Bill 5-24? This bill was discussed extensively at our work session. We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 5-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
We do not have anyone signed up in advance to speak on Bill number 5-24. Is there anyone here who now wishes to speak on Bill number 5-24? Please come up to the table, have a seat. When it is your turn, state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes.
So it's Maria Hartman of Savannah Park. Since I'm here, I figured I might as well make one more comment. I attended a session of one of the town councils about a year ago and also saw online one of the recent sessions regarding budget. And it seems like there were so many persuasive things about teachers saying, and some of the teachers that I have talked to, saying that they needed more salary. And what I'm seeing is that was the plea to get more money from taxpayers. We have our property taxes. We were just all told that property taxes were raised. And the property taxes were raised to fund the school, and the school was funded in order to pay the teachers. And I think this bill has, it's about taking money it's required. It wasn't necessarily required to make the suggestions that were made to change things around. I think that everything that's ever been given for the teachers should stay with the teachers' package, and I think that it doesn't make any sense when in this environment, all of a sudden there seems to be money coming in, and there's excess money, and all of a sudden you've had $50 million extra taken from the taxpayers and given to the school system, and I don't know, it isn't clicking with this environment of all this money coming around where it's like, okay, now we can raise everything to higher places where we haven't put these different positions before. We just need more accountability rather than less. It doesn't make sense to me to see everything just rubber stamped. So I'm going to ask that you also wait on this one, find out more of where this money is going and why it's going where it is. And I don't know why there aren't more people here, but it's really kind of hard, I guess, to get into those line items and look at everything that they're doing. So I'm just learning. But let me state that, please consider that seriously, because I think it's another wisdom question. And I'm a little bit nervous being by myself. It's a little bit easier when someone sits next to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. The public hearing on Bill number 5-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 5-24.
Bill number 524, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, Board of Education, supplementary appropriation, and transfer of funds.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Volke.
Just for the record and for public follow along on this, Mr. Stansky, can you give us a very high level, where is this extra money coming from? And you don't even have to go line by line through the auditor's letter or the blue note or any of that. And where is it going?
Sure. For the record, again, Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer in Arundel County Public Schools. So the school district's budget is broken up into two larger funds, our unrestricted fund, which is where the county government contributes funding, as well as restricted funding. And so on the federal, state, local unrestricted side, we're requesting an additional $15.6 million. This is all coming from prior year fund balance, so no surprise to the public or to this council. Last school year, the district struggled to hire, teachers, given the teacher shortage. And so that salary money fell to our fund balance. We're now asking to reappropriate that fund balance to really target a couple larger ticket items, one being the new reading adoption that we just adhered to. We're also doing some renovations to Mary Moss School as well as the Phoenix Academy. And we're also shoring up our healthcare fund. Our claims went up a substantial amount last school year, and so we're looking to really kind of get that fund into a better place. The rest of this revenue is coming from federal, state, and local grants. And so those are all restricted in nature. Obviously, when we get grant money, that can only be spent for specific purposes. And so that additional appropriation authority is coming. These are grants that either were unanticipated when the budget was adopted or came in greater than what we estimated when we adopted the budget back in June.
Any further questions of my colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 5-24.
Ms. Fiedler. Aye. Ms. Rodvian. Aye. Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 524 has been passed.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 3-24.
Resolution number 324, resolution amending certain portions of Titles 1, 3, 4, and 5 of the Rules of Procedure of the County Council.
Thank you. This resolution has 3 sponsors. Ms. Hummer?
Yes, this resolution, as discussed at the last meeting at the work session, is the culmination of the work of the 2 committees of the council looking at revising our rules. However, I think it's become clear that the will of my colleagues is that we continue that work in our committees. So I believe we have an amendment tonight to this resolution.
Is there any discussion on Resolution 3-24?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Oh, my apologies. I see the agenda actually did not include your name, but you are on the resolution, so
thought I
I can.
was. Okay, thank you.
I can confirm that.
There is an amendment. Madam Secretary, would you like to read amendment number 1?
Madam Chair. Amendment number 1, this amendment restores the responsibility for supervision of the appointed officers and employees of the County Council to a single supervisor, clarifies that each council member may communicate directly with their appointed officers and employees, and modifies the provisions of access and supervision of contractual employees and consultants to be governed by Rule 2101.
Mr. Smith, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
All right, thank you. Just for clarification, this amendment is being proposed to establish clarity on the role of the chair and how staff interacts with that model. It also clarifies that all members of this body can communicate with appointed staff and employees. Since this was the most important concern, I thought it was necessary to address this issue now via this resolution. Discussion on other rules should and will take place, but it is my belief that further discussion is needed to reach consensus on those items. The more pressing concern is the alignment of direction from this body to its staff. And so to provide that clarity, that it was prudent that we focus on this particular item so that we can ensure that there's continuity in how the delivery of instruction is given to staff members. So motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Rodvian, second.
Is there any discussion on amendment number 1? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 3-24.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Resolution number 324 has been adopted.
Is there any other business to be brought before the county council at this time? I have some business. We do need to discuss if this body would like to convene starting in March, April, and May at 6 p.m. rather than 7 p.m. due to our region plans and comp zoning. Do we anticipate needing that extra hour, I guess is what I'm asking. Ms. Rodvian is saying no.
I'm saying for Region 7, I don't think so. I know you've got a piece of Region 7 as well, but most of it's in District 6, and I actually think we'll be fine.
Ms. Heather?
I would agree based on the size and scope of previous comp rezoning and how that council met. I think this question may be more permitted for Region 4.
So what I'm hearing is hold off in March, maybe think about April and May.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
I think our ones right now are not going to be as complex, but I think Region 4 may need that extra time.
Okay. Well, with that said, may I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The county council is adjourned until March 4th, 2024, where we will meet at 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody.